Hi everyone, it's Jessica Patnaik from Sci International School, and it is with much delight that I introduce the next expert session with Jack D. Fischer. He is an American engineer, he's a test pilot and a former NASA astronaut. Fischer was selected in June of 2009 as a member of the NASA Astronaut Group 20 and qualified as an astronaut in 2011. He made his first space flight in April of 2017 as a flight engineer for expeditions 51 and 52 on the International Space Station. He has a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering, and he completed a Master of Science degree in Aeronautics at MIT in 1998. Without further ado, Jack D. Fischer. Before I request our speaker, Jack D. Fischer, to present, it is a pleasure to inform our viewers that our viewership is increasing every day, and we have already crossed 50,000 viewers. Further, I'd like to inform that Education World has joined us as our media partner, which takes our viewership to more than 100,000.
We came down to visit. We were able to see the Saturn V before they put it in the building, so it's just sitting out there. And in this picture, I'm rocking a little powder blue jumpsuit and looking up at this rocket, just fell in love. That was kind of a childlike, just infatuation with the whole concept of space, and I chased that. But it wasn't until my sophomore year at the Air Force Academy where I really galvanized the passion for space. I grew up in Louisville, Colorado. I think I'm the fifth generation of Fischer to grow up in that town, and went to Centaurus High School there in Lafayette. Went down the road, went to the Air Force Academy. So the Academy really allowed me to galvanize that and to just grow up as a man and move on from there. Obviously, the Air Force has been a huge family for me. My brothers and sisters were just like family, all the things that we've gone through. So it was a very formative 4 years and probably the most important of my life. And then followed that up, the Air Force allowed me to go to graduate school before pilot training. So I went to MIT. Both places I majored in astrodynamics, astronautical engineering, and then went to fly, and I've been flying ever since. To get to astronaut is a very long road. I was always ready for what was next, but loved where I was at. I wanted to serve my country. The Air Force Academy was a no-brainer. Didn't like to swim, so wasn't going to go to Annapolis, and New York's too far away, so I wanted to stay in Colorado. I love the Air Force. I love the people. I love working with them. I love that step. I loved being a pilot. I love flying. I love being a fighter pilot. I love being a test pilot. Every step along the way, I loved doing that. So I drew a course. Why astronaut? I drew a course where I would love every step along the way. My dad taught me that, love what you do and you never work a day in your life. And that's what I did. So if fate had different plans for me, I was happy as a clam wherever I was. I gave 100% of, my whole heart to everything that I did, and I loved it. But I always had my eye on the end goal, and I was always ready for that if those opportunities arose. I think it's always better to be lucky than good, but if you're prepared and lucky, that's even better. So, why astronaut? I love the journey. How I got here, being really lucky and being prepared for any opportunity as it came. I've learned a lot of new planes. That's not hard for me, but to learn it in Russian is pretty tricky. I'm a left seater, so in the Soyuz there's 3 seats. You have the commander in the center, then you have the pilot in the left seat. So our job is to work closely with the commander. Actually, the screens are really only in front of the 2 of us. And then the right seat. So I spend most of my time in Star City. I have a great commander, a very experienced, this will be his 5th flight, Fyodor Yurchkin. And then I also have one of my very good friends, Paula Nespoli, in the right seat, who actually flew as a pilot before in the Soyuz. So very experienced crew. We get along great. We've been doing emergency training for the last couple weeks here, and I think we're gelling really well as a crew. So that makes it fun to be able to go up with people you like and know, and the crew before us, the crew after us that we will overlap with are a great group of guys as well. I'm a contractor's kid, so building is my thing, and I love taking stuff apart. I love seeing a problem, taking it apart in my mind, and trying to figure out how it works. So I just love using my hands to build. And space exploration is a team sport, and you can't, as astronauts, we're just the very lucky person at the very end of an incredibly long line. Thousands of scientists and engineers and just countless people that make it possible. So to do the great things, the truly amazing things that change our society, you have to work as a team.
Namaste. All right. Okay, so what we're going to do, I have a presentation, a video, and I'm going to talk through it and kind of explain my mission, what we did up there. And I want you to keep two things in mind. First off, as we mentioned earlier, science is all around us. Everything that is a part of this presentation is all based in science. I want to thank the chairman, the principal, and all the distinguished guests, and especially the students of Sci and the other schools for letting me come here and speak today. So with that, let's get going with this presentation. You guys have some great bass, but I got to turn it down a little bit so you can hear me. All right. So I took off out of Kazakhstan, the Baikonur Cosmodrome, on a Soyuz FGA rocket. And it's a 3-stage rocket. All the orange and green stuff that you see is the rocket part. The little white part at the end is an escape module that can take us away from the rocket in case it starts to blow up. When they build it horizontally, and then they actually rotate the whole rocket vertically and put it into position for takeoff. It's pretty amazing. There's only about 2 inches of clearance when they rotate that thing. And while they're getting the rocket ready, we're getting ready. So we do all sorts of crazy training, and we also, in Russia, do a lot of traditions. We lay flowers at the tomb of Yuri Gagarin and Korolev. We also sign a book in Yuri Gagarin's office. He was the first human to go into space. We sign the doors of the rooms that we stay in while we're in quarantine down at Baikonur. We do all sorts of stuff. And then we head out to get in our spacesuits. So our spacesuits are a special system that allows us to survive in case there is a leak in our capsule and it goes to vacuum. So we go ahead and test that, and then we're in like a fishbowl, and we say goodbye to our family through some glass so that we don't get sick, and then we head on out to the rocket. So you look a little bit silly, but that allows you to sit kind of in the fetal position because there's not much room in the rocket. It only takes 8.5 minutes for us to go from the ground to orbit. And we have a little stuffed animal on a string, and when it starts floating, we know we're in space. Then we do use some technical pieces of equipment, and we find the space station. It's a bit tricky because it's going kind of fast, 17,500 miles an hour. But then we go ahead and we dock to it. There's a rule that when you get on board the space station, you have to get the biggest smile you've ever had in your entire life when you come through the hatch. And that's pretty much what I was doing there when I saw Peggy and my buddy Oleg. And this is my crewmate, Fyodor Nikolaevich Yurchikin, who this was his 5th mission to the space station.
But it's a burrito of awesomeness smothered in awesome sauce, baby. It's so beautiful.
That's what I told my wife when she asked me what I thought of being in space. And most of my vocabulary revolves around the word awesome, so I had to call it a burrito of awesomeness. We also get a lot of vehicles, visiting vehicles that bring cargo and supplies to the space station. And 2 days after I arrived, the Cygnus was docked. This is a special vehicle because some of our vehicles burn up in the atmosphere. The Cygnus is so capable that we can actually put different experiments on board that vehicle, and then it undocks, it flies around for a couple weeks before coming back in. And it's a great example of what you can do as a team. So when we undocked, I said a few words about Cygnus.
OA7 and the SS John Glenn. In its release and the entire mission, it performed beautifully, a fitting testament to the legendary explorer and patriot whose name it bears. The performance is also a testament to the team that supported it throughout the mission. Every detail, from the flawless system operations to the perfectly labeled straps, to a well-orchestrated symphony of cargo and science logistics. We can't say enough about the team we have the privilege to represent here on orbit, and want to send our best wishes on the final phase of its mission. Godspeed and fair winds, SS John Glenn. It has been an honor.
And that's just what it's all about, working as a team. And we actually sent part of our crew home, so there were only 3 of us on the space station for 2 months. And on the US segment, it was just me and my buddy Peggy Whitson. And we were able to capture, dock, unload, do the entire science complement, repack it up, and get rid of SpaceX 11 in a little over a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we thought it was impossible before we did it. And we could only do it because of the incredible work of all the people on the ground who were doing everything to help us and enable us to be able to do that. And then about a month and a half later, we got another cargo vehicle, SpaceX 12. You can't see it, but it looks like Christmas lights there, red and green. And this is a great time-lapse video of what happens when we dock one of these vehicles. So we have to make sure that there's no leaks in the compartment in between the vehicles. We have to remove a bunch of equipment. We put on some fancy gear to make sure there's no contamination inside, and then we get inside the vehicle, open the hatch, and start taking cargo out. Cargo is super fun in space because it doesn't weigh anything, and even though it's a big, huge container, you can still move it around like it's nothing and put it all on all the walls, so it's a whole lot of fun. Since Fyodor was the only Russian, I had to get trained up in some of the Russian systems so that we could dock and undock the Progress cargo vehicles. All of these cargo vehicles are extremely important. When you are cruising around at 17,500 miles an hour, 400 kilometers high, you need a lot of stuff to be able to get your job done. Your fuel, your water, everything. And most importantly, science. That's the reason why the space station exists. All of these vehicles are full of science. All over the space station, we have racks as big as this, which is almost my size height-wise, down to little teeny experiments. This is a biophysics experiment, and right next door is a combustion chamber. So on Earth, we use gravity and convection, and flames are actually fed oxygen to keep them alive. Whereas on orbit, it burns all the oxygen around the flame until it puts itself out. So we have to understand that so that we can have more efficient combustion here on Earth, but also know how to build engines in space. This is a great experiment called the electrostatic levitation furnace, and they take little balls of metal, levitate them between magnets, shoot it with a laser to melt it, and then as it cools, because there is no convection, it cools uniformly and it can make alloys that are lighter and stronger than anything we can do on Earth. This is the Microsciences glove box, which keeps us safe from different experiments or the experiments safe from us. This one was freeze-dried medicines. And then my buddy Peggy is working on another experiment in there so you can see that what it looks like when we're actually using the gloves. These are robots that are like the little drones from Star Wars that Luke was practicing with. And we have school kids actually program them for different logic contests, and we have international competitions to see who wins. We also do technology demonstrations. This is actually a CO2 scrubber that uses a technique called capillary action, or a physical property called capillary action, to clean the air. And this is one of my favorite ones. I called it the cancer-seeking missile. I'm an old fighter pilot, so it actually targets antibodies in cancerous tissue and leaves the healthy tissue alone. So as a father of a daughter with cancer, this one was very important to me, that we try to find a cure for that terrible disease. We also have a lot of robots. This one is a Japanese robot. If you ever go to Japan, pretty much you're always bowing to somebody. So I had to bow to the robot. It worked pretty good. Also in the Japanese segment, we have an airlock that one of the great experiments that we had going on was putting a launcher on this airlock table, and then we could slide that through the airlock outside, use the robotic arms to grab it and point it down below the station, and then we were able to launch 41 satellites in a little over 2 weeks. And it's a great way to get new technology to orbit and demonstrate those technologies. We also do all sorts of smaller experiments from school kids all the way from elementary school on up. And I was lucky enough to be on orbit when my high school in Colorado, in the United States, actually launched one of their experiments, and I got to work on it. We grow plants not only so we can figure out how to have vegetation for long duration missions, but also how to increase crop yields and efficiency of growing here on Earth. We also have to miniaturize a lot of technologies. This little teeny device actually sequences DNA. So we can take samples of things that we find and don't know what they are, and we can sequence them and determine, no kidding, what they are. We have a lot of experiments outside this space station. This is a rollout solar array that's kind of like a party horn on New Year's Eve that rolled itself out. Unfortunately, we couldn't roll it back in, so we had to let it go. And then there's us. We're the biggest lab rats on the space station. We have to do 2.5 hours of working out every day, or our muscles and bones will deteriorate. So we use our treadmill, which has bungees, to keep us on the treadmill and give us that force. We have this resistive exercise device, and you can see that it kind of clamshells. It's anchored at one point. That way it doesn't impart any loads to the space station as we're doing our workouts. And then we have this goofy bicycle, which is basically just a box. There's no seat. You grab onto a frame while you're riding it, and it's loosely attached to the wall so we don't impart any loads as well. But it gives you a good aerobic workout, and we need that, or we'll come back as 90-year-old men. This is a sprint exercise where we actually do ultrasounds of different slices of the muscles on our legs to see how those workout protocols are working. We also, because there's no gravity to keep blood down in your feet, it actually comes up into your head and increases the pressure in your head and flattens the back of your cornea so it can affect your vision. This is kind of hard to see, but if you've ever gone to get an ultrasound, you know that blue goo they squirt on you? We can just use water up in space because it actually sticks to our face. And then there's the spacewalks. And that is by far the coolest thing that you get to do while you're in space. Once we got back in, did anybody see Gravity? Yeah, we weren't wearing the cute boy shorts like Sandra Bullock, but oh well. So Crew Earth observation, that's where we're taking pictures outside the window. This is a desert. This glaciers, we can see forest fires. We see volcanoes, old and new. We can see 95% of the habitable landmass on Earth during our orbit. We see cyclones, typhoons, hurricanes. We even saw the huge shadow, kind of hard to see there, but from the eclipse, which was a bit unique. We look at erosion. We look at sedimentation patterns. This is a erosion from a lake in Canada. We look at irrigation. All of the pictures that we take, just because they're gorgeous, can be used by scientists and earth scientists at NASA to look at the Earth and understand it better. Even though it's beautiful, it's still science. Whether it's algae formations, sea life, different currents within the water. We look outside and see Bermuda is one of my, and the Bahamas are one of my favorite places because the blues are the most amazingly bright colors you'll see. And with water, as you're going over water, you see a normal lake, and then a few seconds later, the reflection from the sun, you can see the currents. Then it looks like you're looking at a spill of mercury, and a few seconds later, you have the low sun angle that makes it look like it's on fire. So it's a great way for us to learn more about our planet. So the cupola window is at the bottom of the space station, and I spent a lot of time there looking out the window. Sunrises and sunsets, we get 16 every single day. It only takes 7 seconds for the sun to go from below the horizon to a full disk, and it is worth it because those sunrises and sunsets, the layers and the colors absolutely blow your mind and change you as a person. I also tried to take pictures with structures of the space station because it makes you feel like you're a part of something special. And you can also see events like the moon going around the side of the Earth that you just can't see anywhere else. And so it's important for us to take those pictures and share them with everyone here on Earth. It's hard to, it's pretty bright here, so you can't see the pictures too well. But basically, night was one of my favorite times because as you're flying over the Earth and you're seeing the lightning and the lights of the ground, it's almost like a heartbeat of the Earth. And then you have the aurora, and it was blues and greens and purples dancing around like it was alive. It was absolutely incredible. Well, in addition to the science, we also have to live there. So we do all sorts of our housekeeping as well. We give ourselves bad haircuts, but we have to use a vacuum to catch the hair when it floats away. We float off the filters that have all our skin and nasty stuff to keep our air clean every week. We have to go to the bathroom. It's all about suction. The pot is for number 2, and the hose is for number 1. So I'll let you do the math on that. We watch movies every Friday night, and we actually have bungee cords strapped across, and we kind of snuggle in there like flies in a spider web to watch the movies on the ceiling. We play with all sorts of toys. We celebrate our holidays. This was the 4th of July with Peggy and I. It was my 20th anniversary, so I married my wife again from orbit, and my dog wasn't up there, but I put him in the picture anyway. We have Velcro all over the station, so it pretty much trashes your socks. And then this was a special spacesuit. All of these triangles were made by cancer kids all over the world, and we did a large PR event with 8 different nations while we were on orbit to celebrate them. And then eating. This was my favorite, coffee balls. It's the best way to drink coffee, trust me. I don't even know what this was, but it was fun to make and more fun to eat. When it's floating, everything's fun to eat. This is pudding, and if you can eat pudding this way, you really should, because it's a lot of fun. You squeeze the whole packet out on the spoon, and then do your best to fit it all in your mouth. And then when you can't, you go fly after it and get the rest of it. This is our group eating. You gotta play with physics, see how you can spin. And my nickname's Two Fish, so I was swimming with the fishes. But you have a lot of fun, and you have to, because you're in space, and it's awesome. But at the end of it, with all the science and fun behind us, we had to come home. So we get back in our spaceship. This time we picked up a hitchhiker called Peggy Whitson. She came home with us. It takes about 4.5 hours to get from the station to the ground. We do a burn, and then you look out the window and it starts turning pink and then orange and then yellow. Then you start seeing pieces of your heat shield go by. Then it chars over, it becomes black, and then when the chute comes out, those pop off, and you just sit there and wait for the really soft landing. it's not really soft. It's really not soft. So once we land, the Russian search and rescue forces take only a few minutes and they're already there. They orient our capsules so that it's easier to pull us out. Our muscles aren't doing too bad because we worked out so much, but our equilibrium is completely messed up. So they really have to grab your hand and hold you and make sure you don't fall over. So they ended up picking us up, carrying us over, and then they'll set us in some chairs so that we can call our family, wave at everybody. And then we need to get some fluids in our body. When you go to space, you actually lose about 1 liter of fluid because your body is smart enough to know that we don't need all that fluid. And when we get back on Earth, so that you have enough orthostatic pressure, so you have enough pressure with your blood, we have to put that fluid back in our bodies. And then we go to the Kazakh airport and we get to wear some super cool purple robes. This is Fyodor. That's me. They're very fashionable. But I was incredibly lucky to be a part of great crews of 5 and then 3 and then 6. But we represent only a fraction of the thousands of people all over the world in all of these centers that made this mission possible. And so with that, I want you to remember, this should always serve as a reminder of the incredible things that you can do when you work together as one team. All right, so with that, let's see if there's any questions in the audience, and I'm gonna do my best to answer them.
We have been talking a lot about science, but I would like to ask you a question. You talked about the different fun things that you did in space, and it looks quite blissful. But what will be that one thing that you feared in space? What were the emotional quarters there?
So the thing that I feared most was not doing my part. So like I said, there are thousands of people there are people who dedicate their whole lives to an experiment. They build it, they design it, they send it up. We have people that are controlling it and running it. And all I had to do was install it or do some procedure. I felt, I'm Catholic, so Catholics always feel guilty. So I felt guilty if I couldn't do that experiment perfectly so that they could get the data and the science back that they needed. For me, it was just that expectation, understanding that I was gonna make mistakes because over 6 months, you're gonna make mistakes. But I wanted to try to minimize anything that I did that would affect their life's work.
Good morning, sir. Sir, this is Kritish Kumar Rai from Others. And my question is, sir, we all saw that seminar what you showed, but you did not mention what was the aim of your mission. Like, what did you learn from going from Earth to those orbit?
Okay, so when we go up nowadays, I did, while I was on board with Peggy, we did 337 experiments over that 5 months. So we go up for the overall goal of accomplishing science, whatever that science may be that's on board at the time. Some of the big stuff that we looked at, I showed you that cancer drug, which I consider one of the biggest things that we worked on. There was also a new drug that actually spurs bone growth. So we figured out how to stop bone loss for astronauts on orbit, but this drug actually encourages bone growth. So we could use it in the field for battlefield injuries, for people in trauma departments where they have a broken bone. This can help it heal better, quicker. There's dozens and dozens of experiments like that we worked on. So right now, because the space station is a national laboratory, an international laboratory, its mission is to do science, whatever the science is that we have up there. And since we're getting so much better and more efficient at doing this science, Peggy and I, as just 2 people, broke the record for the most science done on the space station in a week because they're getting more and more efficient at getting the science up to us. So that the question or the answer is really, to do science, whatever it may be.
Good morning, sir. And my question is, according to the Big Bang Theory, the universe is expanding at a very fast rate. And even we human beings are exploring more of the universe day by day. But the relative rate of our discoveries and the relative increase in the size of the universe is quite a big amount. So how much do you think can we humans discover of the total universe, and how much time will it take us?
How much of the universe will we be able to explore? Holy cow. Well, we better figure out warp drive first, right? No. We really do need to work on propulsion, because all of these galaxies and universes that are close to us are still generations away by our technology today. We have to figure out propulsion and radiation protection before we can even get out of our own universe. Until that happens, I don't know that I can answer that question. Besides, that's a really hard question.
Okay.
But the answer is basically right now, we are stuck in our universe until we can figure out how to go faster.
Yes. Sir, don't you think we look at stars and stars also look back at us?
Absolutely. Hopefully someday somebody with a better engine will come and visit, and they'll be friendly.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. I have two questions. My first question is, recently a bacteria was found on the space station. Do you think that's from our body, or do you think that it is alien bacteria?
You know, I talked about that with Fyodor a bunch, because it was found on some exhaust vents on the Russian segment of the space station. And since we haven't taken the sample yet, we can't really determine what it is. They're planning, I think, on the next Russian EVA, so the next Russian spacewalk, to take a sample and more fully investigate that bacteria that they found. We have different life forms on Earth that can survive in very extreme environments, like space. And so perhaps it's some sort of bacteria that hitched a ride with us to space when we were constructing this station. But until we take a sample, we're not going to be able to definitively say. Hopefully it's alien, because that would be cool.
So I have a question that doesn't the space station get hit by space junk?
It does. So when I was out on the spacewalk, you can see these little divots all over the space station. And then, when I would always go at night to close things up and turn off the lights and close the shutters, every now and again you'd hear a dink. You'd be like, uh-oh. And you'd wait to see if your ears pop, because if there was a hole, the pressure differential, your ears would pop first before our sensors would even notice. And luckily, my ears never popped, so we didn't have a hole. But we get hit by junk all the time. And when it's bigger junk, and they can track a little over a centimeter, about 4 centimeters, something like that would be catastrophic if it hit us. And when the people on the ground who track that stuff see one coming, then we actually use a progress vehicle on the back of the station to boost the station to a higher altitude and get out of the way, because we don't want to get hit by that.
Sir, nowadays, so we have ground-based ADS-B stations, and they have made the space-based ADS-B stations possible for the surveillance of aircraft all around the world.
ADS-B, okay. Yes, that would definitely help. The only problem with it is the space-based signals are much easier to jam. So when the bad guys want to jam, we can actually make a jammer about the size of a Coke can, and it can wipe out a 300-mile radius. So it's safer because there's more reliability, but it has its weaknesses, because there are ways that we can jam that and then we can't use it.
Sir, do you think after when the human resource is over, do you think we will shift to another planet? And if so, to which one?
So do I think we'll shift to another planet? I don't think we'll ever leave Earth unless we have to, because Earth is pretty awesome, right? You want to stay home.
I want to ask, what was the first thought you got in your mind when you got to know that you have been selected to go to space? And which place do you prefer, Earth or space?
Well, I prefer space because it's a heck of a lot more fun, but my wife's not there, so it's a draw. If I could get her up there, I would stay forever. As far as the first thought, I was so excited I could pee my pants when they said I could be an astronaut. So I was just ecstatic. It was a dream from a little boy since I was 6 years old to go to space. So I was ecstatic.
With an interview with our own pioneer, Orissa, and astronaut Jack Fischer. Let's see what he has to say about his trip to India and words of encouragement about never giving up.
Hello everyone, I'm here with Colonel Jack D. Fischer, also NASA astronaut.
Well, to be a part of the SciTid conference. So I saw the invitation, and there were so many kids and the opportunity to interact with so many children that we thought it was a priority at NASA to come and try to spread the word about spaceflight and exploration.
Okay. And what was your first impression of India?
I think that India is just very rich in culture and history. And as I first went to the Delhi airport and then here, and you just can see how much history there is and just a deep culture that it's very interesting, and I'm glad I was able to see it. This is my first time.
Cool, okay. And what was your favorite part about SciTid?
I guess just interacting with the children, and really the questions, the quality of the questions have been so good. Such bright young minds that it's been a real pleasure to interact with all the students.
Okay. What kind of education and background would you think an astronaut needs to have?
So it really depends. We have a wide variety of backgrounds. We have test pilots, we have doctors, we have scientists and engineers, just a wide variety. And really what's important is that you find something that you really love and you go after it. It does have to be in science and technology type of background, but as long as you find something you love, it'll work as an astronaut.
Okay. And do you have any words of wisdom for the young children?
You know, it's the same as what I said last night at the end of the conference. It's the advice my dad gave to me right before he died. I was going to leave the Air Force Academy and come home to help the family, and he said, "No way, kid. I dare you to dream." And that's important because the dream is finding what you love, finding your passion, and then he dared me to go out and get it and make it real, because no one will hand it to you. You really have to work hard and push your limits and push beyond where you're comfortable so that you can make the dream happen. And if you do that, there's nothing that can stand in your way.
Thank you.
You bet.
I would like to thank Jack Fischer for sharing with us about his remarkable trip into space and the time that he spent on the International Space Station. Sci International School e-summer camp will continue to host such expert sessions every evening from June 1st to 14th. Please tune in live on the school's YouTube channel, or you can access these sessions through the school website at sirs.edu.in, sciinternational.edu.in, and sciungan.co.in. See you tomorrow.